In the city of Rome, beneath its ancient stones, a hidden garden glowed where no footsteps fell, and only flowers remembered the sun. And I know this may not sound like your typical fantasy opening line, but it's actually perfect because it shows us what we're getting. Because here, beneath the shadow of the great stone feet of the Colosseum, forgotten by all but the earth and the stars, a humble servant named Aurelia cultivated a little patch of dirt and made it hers. Now, if you want to write about ancient Rome, you could go two ways. You can either glum it up or grunge it up. And honestly, both are great choices. But since our protagonist is a humble servant, let's grung it up for her. Now Aurelia was a young woman of 20 summers, hair like dark honey, eyes like polished obsidian. She wore the simple tunic of service, and her hands were calloused from digging in the dirt. Now Aurelia had been an orphan for as long as she could remember. The streets of Rome had been her home, surviving on scraps and kindness, until one day she was taken in by an old gardener who saw in her a reflection of himself and took her under his wing. He taught her the language of plants, how to coax life from stubborn soil, how to read the wind and the clouds. Then, after 7 years, he died, leaving her his tools and his plot of land behind the Colosseum. It wasn't much, just a sliver of fertile earth tucked between the colossal stones, but it was hers. Now, with time and care, she turned that sliver of earth into a small but thriving garden. Wild lavender, fig, and moonflowers climbed the weathered stones. Vines wove intricate patterns overhead, creating a living roof to shield her little world from the worst of Rome's dust and noise. And though the soil was poor and the sun struggled to reach them, the flowers that grew there drank deep the precious light and flourished in their shade. And while Aurelius's days were spent gathering food and supplies and keeping the garden alive, she found solace in the quiet companionship of her plants. She sang to them as she worked, and they responded in their own silent language, whispering secrets to her through their blossoms and leaves. The flowers told her stories of dappled sunlight filtering through ancient trees, of birds nesting in high places, of buzzing insects carrying pollen on the breeze. And although they knew no words, Aurelius understood their song. They were happy here in their little patch of shade, for beneath the harsh glare of the midday sun, they basked in the gentle twilight, finding strength and beauty in the subtle hues of twilight. They were safe here. The rumble of the Colosseum's crowds faded into a distant hum. Here, among the fragrant blooms and rustling leaves, Aurelius found a sanctuary from the chaos of the city. Here, the scent of crushed lavender mingled with the rich aroma of ripening figs. The soft glow of moonflowers bloomed in the gathering dusk, painting Aurelius's world in shades of silver and ivory. It was a world apart from the clamor of Rome, a place where the sun's embrace was gentle and the moon's soft light painted dreams upon the petals. But the flowers weren't the only ones who sought refuge in the garden. Now, Aurelia's garden was known throughout the city as a place of peace, a sanctuary where weary souls could find solace, and gladiators did come seeking respite from the brutal reality of their existence. Some, like the man before her, were veterans, seasoned fighters, bearing the scars of countless battles on their bodies and in their souls. Others were newer recruits, green and uncertain, grappling with the weight of the life they'd been thrust into. Whatever their story, the gladiators found solace in the tranquility of Aurelia's garden. The sight of the blood-soaked sand was replaced by the soft caress of petals and leaves. The clash of steel was drowned out by the gentle murmur of the wind through the vines, and the sting of defeat or the elation of victory faded into insignificance beside the timeless serenity of the flowers. This particular gladiator, whose name was Decimus, had been a centurion in the imperial guard before being betrayed and left for dead. Disfigured and shunned, he'd found his way to the fighting pits, where the cheers of the crowd were a painful echo of his former glory. But in Aurelia's garden, he found a moment's forgetfulness of his pain and his past. He would sit for hours beneath the shade of the fig tree, listening to the flowers whisper their secrets to Aurelia. Sometimes he brought her small offerings, a coin for a new tool, a length of linen for a bandage, or a book of poetry, its pages filled with tales of valor and love. And Aurelia, in turn, offered him figs, fresh from the vine, and sprigs of lavender to ease his wounds. As the years rolled by, Decimus became a regular visitor to the garden, and as Aurelius tended her flowers, she learned his story, the triumphs and tragedies that had shaped him into the warrior he was today. She listened as he spoke of his former life, of the camaraderie of the guard, the thrill of victory in battle, and the agony of betrayal. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Aurelius felt a growing fondness for the stoic warrior. She admired his strength, his resilience, and the quiet dignity with which he faced his fate. In turn, Decimus found solace in Aurelia's gentle nature and her unwavering kindness. Her spirit, as resilient as the flowers that thrived in her garden, inspired him to keep going, to hold on to the fragments of his past and find beauty in the present. And so it was that amidst the roar of the Colosseum and the clamor of the city, a bond formed between a humble servant and a seasoned gladiator, nurtured by the silent wisdom of the flowers. For in the hushed reverence of the evening air, surrounded by the sweet perfume of blossoms and ripening fruit, Aurelius and Decimus found an unexpected solace, a shared sanctuary where the echoes of the past faded and the whispers of the flowers held court. And then one day, Decimus didn't show up. Weeks turned into months, and still there was no sign of the gladiator. Aurelia worried about him, wondering if he'd been injured or worse, killed in the arena. The thought of his passing brought a deep sadness to her heart, for she, grown fond of the stoic warrior, and his visits to her garden had become a source of comfort and joy. Then, one evening, as the sun was setting and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, a new visitor came to the garden. A young man, barely more than a boy, breathless and flushed from his exertions, stood before Aurelia, his eyes wide with wonder and admiration. "Aurelia," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness of the evening, "I've heard tales of your wondrous garden and the brave soul who tends it. They say your flowers bloom in the shade and bear witness to the secrets of the stars. Is it true?" And as Aurelia looked into the young man's earnest eyes, she saw the same wonder and curiosity that had drawn Decimus to her sanctuary. And so she smiled and beckoned him to sit beside her amongst the fragrant blooms and ripening figs. And as the evening deepened, she told him the story of the gladiators, of their triumphs and struggles, their hopes and dreams, and of the quiet dignity with which they faced their fate. The young man listened, rapt, his eyes shining with admiration and respect. And when Aurelia finished her tale, he rose to his feet, his face filled with newfound determination. "I am a gladiator," he said, his voice ringing with newfound confidence, "and I will honor my brothers in arms by striving to be the best I can be." And as he turned to leave, Aurelia called out to him, her voice echoing in the stillness of the evening. "Do not forget the flowers," she said, "for they, too, have stories to tell and strength to share." And so the young gladiator turned back, his eyes meeting Aurelia's with a newfound understanding. He bowed his head in gratitude and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Aurelia to the soft company of her flowers and the memory of those who had found solace in their fragrant shade. And so it went, season after season, year after year. The flowers bloomed and faded, the seasons turned, and the whispers of the ancients carried on the wind, mingling with the scent of crushed lavender and ripening figs. Through it all, Aurelius tended her garden, finding purpose and solace in the gentle company of her plants and the memories of those who had sought refuge in her little corner of peace. For beneath the harsh glare of the midday sun, in the heart of bustling Rome, a hidden garden thrived, a sanctuary where weary souls found solace, gladiators sought respite, and flowers whispered tales of courage and hope to anyone who would listen. And as the centuries rolled by, no one remembered the garden except the flowers that still bloomed beneath the ancient stones, still humming the soft song of stillness. If you liked this Roman fantasy short, check out more stories like these. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.